Over the past month, I've been continuing work on my solo game dev project, Sacred Forest. It's an action-adventure game where you play as a pixel art, bow-wielding heroine set within a diverse forestscape. Master slow-mo archery, glide with your cape, and swing with grapple arrows to battle the blight that has infected the forest. It's developed in Godot 4, and you can even wishlist it on Steam right now. I'll leave a link down below. All the support so far has been extremely awesome to see, and a lot of people have left some really great feedback in the comments. I've done a number of changes to the game, as well as added a lot of new content, so let's start off with the main character. First of all, I worked more on the design for the main character's face and head. I'm pretty happy with all the changes that I've done so far, and this was really important to do up front, because there's still a lot more animations for the main character, as well as when I design NPCs for the game, they'll follow a similar design structure. Speaking of more animations, in the last video I mentioned that I wanted to make walk animations because when the character moves slowly, it looks pretty silly to see her immediately start her run animation. I felt like it would smooth out the character movement if there was a bit of a transition from walk to run. So I went ahead and made the walk animations in all of the different directions. At this point, the main character, for just the third person perspective, has about 237 frames of animation, which I definitely feel like I've learned a lot during this process since the main character is about 50 pixels wide by 70 pixels tall, and I do each frame by hand in Sprite. There's still a lot more animation work to go, even just for the main character, but it's something I actually do enjoy and it's rewarding to see the end result. A huge reason to make the walk animations right now as opposed to later is because I want to start making NPC characters, and most of those will only really need an idle animation and walk animations. By finishing the main character's walk animations, it lets me pretty easily use her as more of a template to make new characters. So with the main character walk animations out of the way, that's exactly what I started doing. Here's one of the new characters. He pulls this cart around to bring supplies to different towns. You can even jump inside and ride it around. This was a pretty good test for the pathfinding that I'll be using for all the characters in the game. Here's another character, and this lady here. They kinda look similar to the cart guy. Are they related? Maybe. If I walk over to this little forge area, there's a blacksmith character. He's got a mustache. Finally, if I walk up some of these stairs, there's an ominous scythe-wielding figure at the top. None of these are just randomly designed characters. I've actually worked on the story for Sacred Forest quite a bit. It's not fully complete, but it's important to me that NPCs don't just feel like they get thrown into the game as filler, and I want them all to have a meaningful reason to exist. I definitely don't want to spoil anything in these devlogs though, so I probably won't go too much into detail on the story other than just high-level ideas. You may have noticed something different about the main character and these NPC characters, like they have a little bit of depth to them. Well, that's because I created normal maps for all the characters. You might have heard of or used normal maps before, especially for 3D models. If you don't know what a normal map is, the simple overview is that it's like a texture for a 3D model, but instead of coloring the model, it controls how light is bounced off the surface. So by adding normal maps, you can add more detail to a 3D model without having to add extra geometry or triangles. This blue looking image is an example normal map. You might ask what this has to do with my characters, because they're obviously 2D, so there wouldn't be any triangles. Well, they aren't actually 2D since they're in a 3D world. They're displayed by using a rectangle made of triangles. Here's the normal map for my character. If I add it to the game, it'll affect how all the lights will interact with its surface. It's pretty noticeable if you look at the edge of the character, depending on where the sunlight is coming from. It makes the side of her arm not look so flat. Here's a side-by-side comparison with and without a normal map. I think it gives it a pretty cool effect, but it definitely needs to be cleaned up a bit. I'll have to do that when the character design is completely finalized for all the animations, because otherwise I'd just have to redo it. I talked about my zone loading system in the last devlog, where I can create zones and it'll spawn or despawn objects within the world. If you were to be very close to the zone, it would look like things are just popping in and out of existence, which would be pretty jarring for the player. So the idea for zones is that they would be large enough to where a player wouldn't be right next to an object that's getting spawned in. Zones help optimize the game by reducing the geometry that's rendered at any given time, as well as reducing all the scripts that are running from things like NPC characters or enemies. It's basically a catch-all system, so that while I'm developing Sacred Forest as an open world game, it makes it more like I'm developing it as lots of small games combined into one. Some people ask why I wouldn't just use occlusion culling, which is built into Godot. Since with occlusion culling and the LOD system that's already in the game engine, it will hide objects that the player can't see, and even hide them based on the distance to the main camera. The truth is that I actually already am using occlusion culling and the built-in LOD system, but I use it in conjunction with my zone system. They have a bit of overlap since they both can reduce the amount of geometry being rendered at any given time, but there's some cool features built into making things more smooth for the player. I use occlusion culling and the LOD system within a zone to smoothly fade out all of the geometry as the player gets farther and farther away. Then once it leaves the zone, instead of just hiding all these objects, they actually get unloaded from the game. Alright, enough about zones. In the previous devlogs, the world that I showed off was just a test world to prove out different mechanics and to make sure it would be possible to scale the game up. Well, it's finally time to start creating the actual world for the game. To start with, I wanted to work on this small little village, which is pretty close to the starting point for the game. There's been a lot of visual improvements as I designed this, like a new river system with waterfalls, different particle and audio effects, and just a lot of small little details. The main reason for starting with this little village is because I'm working towards creating a demo for the game, which has to have the following: a tutorial and at least one small quest or mission. This might not sound like a lot, but it means that pretty much every aspect of the game has to have at least some kind of basic implementation. The buzzwordy way to say it is a vertical slice. It needs things like dialogue, object interactions, the quest system, all of the movement mechanics completed, a HUD for the game, various menus and UI, settings for anyone testing the game to adjust everything, a save system. The list kinda goes on, so there's quite a lot to do, but by designing the initial areas for the game and some of the NPCs, it opens up a lot of possibilities to try to implement a lot of these systems. So back to this small village. It isn't done and it needs a lot more work, but I'm happy with how it's turning out, and I'm pretty excited to work on the new features for the game. As far as devlogs go, it takes me a while to get enough content ready for the game worthy of putting together a video, so it would really mean a lot to me if you consider subscribing. Anyway, I ended up making a Discord because I'll need help testing the game in the future. I'll leave a link down below. Also, check out the Steam page. Or not. Until next time.